Our first speaker is Dr. Kamyar Enshayan. And first time I heard him speak was at a CCI meeting a couple years ago. And he had one little idea that he talked about that really was interesting and convinced me that he had a great insight on the whole situation. He talked about the fact that sometimes we talk about the last 100 years as being this fantastic period of technological development and information expansion. But what we really had in the last 100 years is an orgy on oil. And he pointed out that that orgy is about to stop. We're running out of oil. Kamyar is a leading local food advocate, has been for about 13 years. He was one of the first supporters of Buy Fresh, Buy Local in Iowa. And when you mentioned Kamyar's name to Mary Carter and the other people who got Buy Fresh, Buy Local started here in Fairfield and southeast Iowa, they have nothing but good things to say because he helped them get that established. You can see his educational background in the program, so I won't go through that. A couple of interesting and important things, though. He teaches classes in environmental studies at the University of Northern Iowa. He's the director of the Center for Energy and Environmental Education at UNI, and he's a member of the Cedar Falls City Council. In 2008, the Practical Farmers of Iowa awarded him with the Sustainable Agricultural Achievement Award. He's going to show us tonight, using hard data, why local food economies and not industrial agriculture create a win-win situation for entire communities. Let's welcome Dr. Kamyar Enshayan.
Well, I'm really honored that you've invited me to be here. I'm really grateful. I love Fairfield. It's beautiful. I already went to the farmers market today. My claim to fame is that I'm a friend of Susan and Francis Thickey. And and Mary Carter and many others who have have helped a lot of wonderful things happen in this community. But most importantly, I'm really amazed at the turnout and the work of this organization to kind of defend the vitality of the county. I mean, it's really incredible. So I keep thinking if our soldiers are putting their lives on the line to defend the country, it's going to take us here to also defend it in many other ways. It takes many of us. And this is a very important work, very, very important work. So thank you. There's a lot of talk about bioterrorism and how to safeguard our system of food and agriculture from terrorists. But if we look around us, we see that the forces that systematically are destroying American agriculture are almost entirely domestic. Let's take a look at the list that we're familiar with. And really, here I'm speaking as a public servant. I work at the University of Northern Iowa, and so this is not a political speech or editorial speech. It's based on factual things, the reality as we experience, and I think public institutions have a responsibility to address those. So what are some of the troubles that are self-inflicted, again, domestically, that we're experiencing in Iowa? Nitrogen pollution of our streams, atrazine in our drinking water and in our streams, farm policies that kill independent businesses and impoverish small towns, genetic manipulation for profit and power, and monopolization of agricultural markets by a few corporations, severe soil erosion. So now here's a couple of questions. If some entity from outside the country came to Iowa and ruined our streams and our drinking water and messed up our soil, would we sit silently? And you haven't, obviously, because you're here, you're engaged. And what if someone came and spread a deadly bacteria and sent 1,500 people to the hospitals across from the country? Which is happening right now. As Wendell Berry asks, to what extent do we defend against foreign enemies, a country that we ourselves are destroying? So one clear and troubling example of a domestic biological threat in our system of food and agriculture is the way the industrial meat giants raise and process livestock. In 2002, roughly during the same time that snipers killed 12 people around nation's capital, contaminated lunch meat killed more than 8 people and sickened many more in New England. It was right about the same time as that tragedy was taking place in near DC area, which prompted a record recall of 27 million pounds of meat. So I asked my students what differences there were between these two tragedies. The class had just read Eric Schlosser's Fast Food Nation, which documents how packing giants repeatedly and deliberately evade public health laws of our nation, leading to meat contamination and death. In both situations, unsuspecting people were going about their daily lives, and they randomly were selected and killed. The only differences my class saw were that the shootings received massive news coverage, but the victims of the contaminated meats died quietly in hospitals with little media attention. And while there was an extensive search for the snipers, there were no arrests in the meat industry. So one of the things I've observed is that the industrial food system that we're all situated in has an unspoken slogan. And that slogan is, just eat it. Just eat it. Don't ask how the food was raised, how the animals were treated, how the soil and water were treated, what was in the feed, did the farmer make a living, and how about hormones and antibiotics, right? Just eat it. Now, I think our slogan is, get yourself a farmer and ask all those questions. Ask all those questions. My friend Mary Smith, who farms in Kentucky, says our country, through its ruinous desire for cheap food, has nearly destroyed the safest food system we could have, which is farmers feeding the people closest to them. Her family sells most of their farm products directly to consumers, and she says, our customers trust us to provide delicious, healthy, safe food. We trust them to pay us a fair price. Now, that's real homeland security. And now I can't read my handwriting here. While really the industrial food has led, I'm just trying to think, I know what it says. By almost every measure, rural communities have declined as a result of the industrial agriculture that is value subtracting rather than value adding. So now I want to go to slides. This is kind of a little introduction to the context as to why we need to reclaim agriculture as a source of community vitality versus a source of trouble, which is what we've been seeing, a source of loss and environmental degradation. But really agriculture and so many farmers, including Susan Susan and Francis have demonstrated all over the state and all over the country that agriculture is a source of community vitality. So I want to share with you what happens in a metro area when you pour some energy and resources to organize ourselves to create an alternative to this industrial food system and reclaim some of it. One of the things we did, and here Mary Carter and many others have helped do, is kind of make locally grown food more visible, make local agriculture more visible. A lot of the times, places where you can find locally grown food is kind of hidden from us. It's not as clear, and so this is kind of an example of that. Next. Now, I don't know if anybody's there to change the slides. There we go. Okay. So I want to just briefly show you a few kind of results without going into a lot of depth. We approached an institutional buyer. In this case, was a retirement home in Waverly, Bartles Retirement Home. In 2002, I just walked in there and said, hello, we can help you. If you're interested, we can help you, connect you to local farms. 2 years later, which was 2004, you can see the details of 1 year of their food budget that they invested on local farms. They bought meats. So here's what happened. There's a meat locker near them, and they found a farmer who does not feed antibiotics and hormones and other animal products in the feed to their cows, and they purchased from them, and you can see the results. And all of this dairy. There was a dairy farm that began working there, bottling, processing, everything, and so they started that march. And then so you can see at the end, in 1 year, this one retirement home spent $42,000 that the year before, this is $42,000 that invested in the lives of local business owners, local farm businesses. The year before, it was zero. And all of this work is really the food service director and her staff this is their work, really. It's their work. And this is 2004. Last year, 100,000. It's just, and we have a lot of good data to show that. So that's how we can change. If one institution can do this, I mean, just imagine how many other institutional buyers are out there that we can approach and saying there are alternatives. You don't have to buy your meat from unknown sources. You can actually have traceability and accountability. Next. The other one that has actually received more publicity has been Rudys Tacos. Again, it's just a very basic diner in Waterloo. It's not a fancy restaurant. It's just a diner. And I call it the king of local food because they, purchase almost 71% of what they buy from local farms. And they've been doing this, and the owner wonders, it's wonderful. Why aren't other restaurants doing this? He has a source of onions, chickens, beef, everything, tomatoes. He has multiple farmers. He probably has about 15 farms that supply the restaurant. Next. There we go. So this actually a graph that really sums up the results of last 14 years of work in Black Hawk County and surrounding counties. So what you see in purple bars are the dollars spent by institutions in the metro area, institutional buyers, like restaurants, grocery stores, retirement home, university. And you can see the yellow dots are the number of institutions. So last year, 26 institutional buyers spent about 2.7 million in locally grown food. And you can see when we started in 97 and in the growing season of 98, it was $100,000. 3 buyers started that. So that's now, how much does our county spend? How much do the residents of our county and our institutional food buyers spend on food every year? 400 million. 400 million. So we have reclaimed 2.7 million of that with literally no infrastructure, right? We don't have a distribution system. We don't have a processing facility. Really, the only processing infrastructure that's left are a few meat lockers that are left. And so that's really, a lot of work is ahead of us, but it's very doable. That's what we need to be working on. And that's what I guess you'll hear from our next presenter of strategies that might move our state in that direction. So it's really fundamental. Okay. Let's see. I want to show a few more slides quickly, tell you about the most exciting project we're doing. Next. Hello. There we go. I see. Okay. So another interesting, since we're talking about community economics, that this everything I've described so far makes economic sense. If you ignore all the other issues, it just makes economic sense. So what I did from 1998 to last year, I added up all of those dollars that these institutions spent on local food. I divided it by how much money we raised by begging to do this work. You know, we had to go get grants, you know, and everything. And so that's the ratio. For every dollar we raised, in other words, for every dollar we invested in organizing ourselves to do this work, we made $14.6 stick around in our area. That's like, you know, it's incredible economic development, right? And again, obviously it wasn't just me doing it, it's just all of the credit goes to all of the food buyers, all of the farmers, all of the people who thought differently about their future and planned, you know, and still doing it. And we're, again, I think so much more work is ahead of us. Next. Okay, so the last idea I want to share with you is one of the most exciting projects that we've undertaken, again, with the financial support from the Kellogg Foundation, from a number, Leopold Center, which has been the main kind of the force in the state to help us rethink food issues. A few years ago, one of the parents, in all of our work, we hadn't really worked with schools because we felt like we were understaffed and schools were complicated and we really didn't want to mess with public schools. It was just complicated. So we thought it had to be parent-driven. We couldn't just come in from outside and say, well, public schools should do this or that. And I got a call from a parent who said that he discovered that there was some recalled beef in the fridge of their local school. Remember 3 years ago, there was a big, the largest ground beef recall from California, you know, and it just went, apparently Iowa was one of the largest recipients, and particularly Iowa schools were the largest recipients. And anyway, so the parents got really mad and they met with the school, and the school decided, and they invited me, and we talked, and one of the parents came forward and said, I'll run the food service if you guys commit to really changing everything. And they abandoned their contract. We got a grant from the Kellogg Foundation, and we started completely transforming the school lunch program at the university's Price Lab School. We run a kind of an experimental K through 12 school. And the year before, one of the parents went and took the photo in 4 different days of 4 actual lunches that were served to kids. I mean, isn't that just appalling? Though I know some people like the corn dog. So next slide, please. So basically, what were the goals? Serve healthy, nutritious food from actual food ingredients, recognizable food ingredients, and and actually hire people who enjoy doing that and want to actually cook. And so next, so they, we hired people, and now that's how food is prepared, instead of all those packaging and things. Next, I'm going through several slides quickly. So next, please. So you cook, and next, and that's what it'll look like on the lunch line. It's not complicated. Next. Again, that's what it looks like. I mean, it's really incredible. It's really incredible. And they saved. We just got the data and all the finances and everything. They saved, compared to the year before, they saved $30,000 too. Next. And just a few images of foods there at Price Lab. Milk is from the local dairy. Okay, next. And on top of that, we started a school garden, which they didn't have. And in April, we hosted a workshop for about 50 public school food service directors who came to see what's happening at Price Lab, and the garden, which was designed really by elementary kids, and now high school kids are involved. Next. Because again, to change that culture of valuing food and agriculture, it's going to start young, right? And this is in independent schools. We're working with 6 school districts right now that we're very intimately involved with. We work with the food service directors, with their staff, helping. And independent school, I don't know if you guys saw 2 days ago, was on the front page of the Des Moines Register. It was an incredible article about what they're doing, and a bunch of other schools in Iowa. They bought sweet corn in summer times and froze it for later use during the school year. Next. I think I'm near the very end of my slide. So the industrial food giants are organizing to trash talk all of our effort to build our local food economies. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news at all, but there's quite a bit of effort building up. They say it will not feed the world, that we cannot afford fresh, locally grown foods, But you just saw in schools, a rural school, if they can feed, there's nothing strange about this. What's strange about wanting to feed ourselves, What's yuppie about that? They say, oh, this is for the wealthy, and this sort of stuff. Again, we saved $30,000. And lots of other fallacies to confuse and to scare. They want all of us to just eat it. And really, the only antidote that I see is citizens who are on the ball. Really, there's no other way around it, unless which is you, which is us. We're trying to know our food system, trying to reclaim it, trying to put it in place the way we want. This is what should be called value retained agriculture, and we need more of it. If our county, for example, set a goal, like I said, we spend almost $400 million every year on food as a county. If we set a goal of reclaiming just 10% of that, that would be $40 million that isn't leaving our community, that would be invested locally. And that would be real economic development that is based on our best and most precious asset we have in Iowa, which is our people and our land. Thank you.